Hi, I'm Rebecca. Welcome to my sewing room. This is So Be It. Today I am making a new pattern. Well, new to me. This is copyright from 2002. So it is a modern pattern, but it does have a vintagey feel. Prairie, that's what it is. The Prairie style dresses. I get kind of annoyed by the more modern patterns because they don't have an actual description of the style of dress. Like the vintage patterns will tell you if it's a circle skirt or what actual style it is. These modern patterns do not do that, but that's all right. So it is Simplicity S9542. I will be making version A, which is this line drawing. It is also the picture that is on the envelope. I really like that idea of the flowy and the lacy and all of that. Suitable fabrics for this pattern are chambray, cotton blends, cotton lawn, gingham, linen blends, poplin, and shirting. You also needed a lightweight fusible interfacing. So let me think. Last fall, we went on a little girls trip to Ohio, and there was a very big fabric store there. They had so many fabrics. I got quite a bit while I was there, and one of the fabrics that I got, I am using for this dress. I didn't know what I was going to do with the fabric when I bought it. So when I saw this pattern, I knew exactly what fabric I was going to use with it. I found a cotton. It's a woven cotton, obviously. There's not much stretch in it, but I fell in love with this. As you can see, there is white embroidery through the fabric as well as a little extra decorative touch. They did have at least one more colorway, a pink colorway. It was really nice, but I liked the white better for a spring dress. This pattern also requires 11 buttons because, as you can see, there's buttons all the way down the front of it. So I went through all of my buttons that I have. I do really like the idea of pink buttons, but I didn't have enough in my stash that actually matched. I have these white pearlescent plastic buttons that I'm planning to use. A also has all of the lace trim on it, as you can see. Some of it is cut away and some of it is just like appliqued or stitched on top of the fabric. So it says 7 5/8 yards of 2-inch wide lace trim. I do not have 2-inch wide lace trim. And I'm actually not positive that I have 7 yards of trim, but I do have quite a bit of different trims, and I have quite a bit of some of them. So for one of my wider trims, lace trims, I do have this. It's about 1.5 inches, possibly 2. I haven't quite measured it. Let me measure it and find out. All right, this one at its widest is 1.75 inches wide. To me, that reminds me of a swan. It is not an actual swan. It's just scallops and loops in there. Another one that I have is, let me measure this one, almost 1.25 inches. So about 1.125 inches wide. And I really like this one. I think it goes best with my fabric, with the flowers. So those are the two wider ones that I have. I also have, and this will work for the ones on the chest and these ones here on the shoulder sleeve, possibly the narrower one down here, if I have enough. But I do have multiple, so it's possible. This white flower This one here. And this one here. So I will probably use a variety of all of those because I don't have a lot of each one other than the bigger ones. So I'll probably use a variety of the smaller ones. This pattern envelope also has a lot of the finished garment measurements on here, which is a rarity. So I do like that part of these sometimes nicer patterns. So according to the finished garment measurements, I need to make a size 16 for the bust, but then I need to grade up to a size 20 for the waist and the hip. I have not traced my pattern yet. I haven't even taken the pattern pieces out of the envelope. I only have taken and read through part of the instructions so far. So I will let you know if I do end up grading up that much, or if I size up to an 18 for the bust. We will see, because I'm going to do a little bit of fitting adjustment as well. I think I will probably end up having to do another petite pattern adjustment and shorten the waist or raise the waistline as well. But I will know more of that once I get the pattern traced. So that's my next step, is tracing this pattern. So I am currently trying to figure out how I'm going to grade up size 16 to a size 20 from the bust to the waist based on my bodice pieces. This is the back bodice piece, and then this one down here is the front bodice piece. From the back, it will be a pretty easy grading because this is the armhole here and 16 stops here. So we go to the 16 line here, and then I can grade out to the 20. For the front, it has a dart, so I have to finish the dart at the 16 size, and then I will be able to grade out at the 20 at the waist on that. So that's what I am going to go ahead and do, and then I will show you my pieces once I get them traced. Okay, so a couple updates from the last when I was tracing the pattern. When I went to cut the pattern out of the fabric, I thought that I had 4.5 yards of fabric, but turns out I only had like a couple inches more than 4 yards. And this pattern calls for 4 7/8 yards of fabric at 44 inches wide. I learned quite a while ago that the pattern companies, when they do the pattern layout or the suggested pattern layout for your fabric, for cutting your fabric, they don't always take into account saving or using as little fabric as possible. So most of the time they will have the fabric folded one, possibly two ways while you're cutting fabric out. But I was 7/8 of a yard short for this pattern, and so I knew I definitely could not follow the pattern layout for cutting. So little tip, if you figure out, and this will take practice, but you may be able to figure out ways to use a lot less fabric than what the pattern calls for. There are many times, especially right now with Joann's going out of business, that you will pick a fabric and you're gonna have like half a yard too little, but you're gonna get it anyways because Joann's is on sale, and you'll still want to do a specific pattern. So try as much as you can. Most of the time you will use less fabric. I got by with 7/8 of a yard too little according to the pattern envelope. And this is all the fabric I've left. I never have this little bit of fabric scraps left over when I cut out an entire project. So win-win for me. That's one update, or one piece of advice. Another update, I did go to the store. I don't mind the idea of having mismatched lace or trim or ribbon or whatever on this dress, like I planned with the multiple different small ribbons if I needed it. I don't mind it, but I don't love it. And there was only one, that flowered motif, that I thought would go really good with this fabric. The other ones were just so it would work out. But I did find new thinner lace, and I got 6 yards of it, and I needed 5.5 yards of the thinner stuff. And this is going to go perfectly with this fabric. These lacy flowers. So that's what I'm going to be using for the thinner style trim. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to try to do this one more like a tutorial. So I'm going to try and go step by step. I'm not always the best at that, especially if I get confused with something, but I'm going to try my best. So the first step of putting this dress together is getting the pin tucks here on the front bodice of the dress. There are no pin tucks on the skirt. There's pleats on the skirt, so I will be doing that at the time that I move to the skirt, because that's kind of a different scale. It's kind of not, but it kind of is. So I already have one side of the bodice pinned for the pin tucks. It's all marked, obviously, but this one is all pinned as well. So these tucks are a 1/2 inch apart. The lines are a 1/2 inch apart, and I pinch the lines together, and that's where the pins are, and that's also the sewing seams. So we have 3 on each bodice. So I'm going to go ahead and show you on this other bodice piece how to actually make those tucks. So hopefully you can see the blue lines I have here. This is the right side of the fabric because the tucks have to be made on the right side for the next step. And then we just bring but I drew them on the wrong side because that's how I always do the markings on my fabric. So now we pinch, basically I pinch the lines together with my nails, and then I pick it up and I pin it the same way that I would pin my darts. And we do this all the way down. And I usually double check on the back to make sure that it's coming through that line as well. And then through the front and check. Yep, it's good. Once you get one pin in over here, it's usually pretty easy to do the rest. Usually. Right, and then, oops. That's not cool. Okay, and then I'll usually go over here and do this end, or do the other end. And now meet in the middle. Okay, we can do one more here. And one more here. So there's that first pin tuck. So now I'm gonna go ahead and move over to the next one and do the exact same thing. So I'm gonna do that off camera, this one and the third one, and then I will come back and show you how I make the stitches on these. I actually need to double check that with all of these pin tucks pinned, that I will be able to sew them all together. So let's actually check that. So I'm going to start at this end because it might be the easiest with all of them pinned. And we're going to make sure I have the straight seam selected. And let's go ahead and see if this is going to work. It looks like it is. So I'm going to actually go ahead and just stitch this seam real quick. Okay, something's happening, and I gotta find out what it is. Oh man, that got really messed up. So I had to get out the seam ripper. I'm glad I was going slow. I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera. Alright, so I'm not really sure what the problem was. I just tested it out again and it seems to be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and try this again. Alright, so that is one pin tuck done. I'm going to go ahead and pin those other two and then sew the remaining 5 because now I know I can sew them. There's enough space for my presser foot to go between and those pins not getting stuck. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I will press them. All of the pin tucks on each side of the bodice have to be pressed towards the shoulders. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so I have both of my front bodice pieces all tucked. They are pressed. They're pressed towards the shoulder seams. The next step is to stitch across the top and the bottom of both bodice pieces. Okay, now that that's done, the next step is to make the darts. You've seen me make darts, but this is going to be a tutorial, so I'm going to go ahead and show you. I did chalk in the dart lines, so they are not quite as bold, and I don't know that you can actually see them. but that goes to right here, and these two spots come together, here and here. Okay, and remember, your darts are always done to the inside of the shirt or whatever, your garment. And you always start at the wide end. So I actually put my pins in the wrong way, but that's okay. You start at the wide end and then work your way to the point and tie off at the point. Now, press our foot up, pull it out, so I have enough left over, clip, and we do a couple ties right here. And then once we get that, we can clip it. The final step for finishing the dart is to press it, and bust darts usually get pressed down towards the waist. But before, that's gonna look nice, I think. But before I press this, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other dart. These are both the front bodices, and you can hardly tell, but they are, darted as well. So now, the next step of dress construction is I have to stay stitch the neckline. So just a straight stitch across the neckline, and then stitch the front to the back at the shoulder seams. Obviously, this is still attached to the pattern piece, so I need to go ahead and prep my pieces, which for this one, if you see, is just cutting the notches. Okay, now that everything is notched on this, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. I'm going to do a straight stitch across this neckline. I don't have a regular seam allowance when I stay stitch. I usually use just the outside of my presser foot. What stay stitching does is help keep your fabric from stretching so much over time. I do really like this automatic clip cut your thread feature on this. It kind of makes things a little bit faster. All right, now that the stay stitching is done with right sides together, we want to match up our shoulder seams and our notches. A lot of times with cotton, I have been using less pins because you don't usually need so much. But this is a bit more of a lightweight. This still seems to be a medium weight, but it is a bit more of a lightweight cotton, and it's quite a bit flimsier. So I'm still using quite a few pins. And now we stitch the shoulder seams. I am going to use the overlock stitch. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how this works. So on this machine, I have a sewing advisor, and you can choose your, oh, look at that. You can choose your fabric weight, and I have a woven medium weight chosen. This is not a stretch, it's not a knit, so I don't have those. And then you can go to your sewing technique, and since I'm doing the shoulder seams now, I'm not doing a regular seam, but I want to do a seam and an overcast. And it's choosing this one, but I kind of like the idea of this overcast stitch better. Right now I also have presser foot A on, but if you look on my machine, it tells me that presser foot B is needed for this, so I have to change my presser foot, but everything else is the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and change my presser foot and do the shoulder seams. I will have to trim my seams after I overcast them, because this is just a sewing machine, not a serger, so this does not trim it. Once they're trimmed, I'll be back to show you what I have. Alright, so here is a finished shoulder seam. It is easily or nicely overcast with that. Oh, there we go. It turned out to be like a diamond shape overcast with the seam. I also pressed the seam towards the back bodice, both of them, towards the back bodice, because the seams are stitched together. Normally, I would press them open towards either side, but when it's all together, I always press them towards the back. One of the steps that I'm not doing, because I'm using the overcast on the main seams, is it says the directions in this tell you to finish the seam allowance by folding it over and doing another stitch on each side. So pressing it open and then stitching both sides of the seam allowance under. But I don't obviously have to do that because I am finishing them this way. Now that my bodice is put together, the next step is to place the first bit of lace trim on the front, on the insides of the tucks, and stitch around that. It says to baste, but I'm going to go ahead and stitch because I will always be worried that my stuff will come off. Stitch around that, and then also do the lace along, apply the lace along the shoulder seam, the front of the shoulder seam. The ones down the front will be the new lace that I just bought, this one. And then the other one will be my favorite wider lace. Once I get that out and pinned, I'll go ahead and show you to remind you what that is. Okay, here's our bodice so far. This is the new ribbon that I found, and that is my favorite out of all of them. Ooh, that shoulder still needs to be trimmed. That shoulder's nice and trimmed and looks neat. So we're gonna go ahead and set the bodice aside. I'm gonna go ahead and fold it in half and just put it on my table. And the next step is to work on the sleeves. Okay, so the sleeves look a little bit different shaped because it's a drop sleeve. I've actually never made anything with a drop sleeve, so this will be my first time. But the first step is to put the lace trim on. There is a placement line, which I do have to mark on my fabric right here for some of the lace, and that's for the wide lace. And then according to the directions, at the very top, just inside the seam allowance, so 5/8 of an inch, or I would probably go 3/4 of an inch down, is where we will put the thin lace. So I'll go ahead and get my line marked, and then I'll show you how I pin it. So I do have, I'm not sure that you can see it, but I do have the line here. According to the directions, the placement for the lace is right above that line. So I'm gonna put the bottom of the lace and pin the bottom on that line. And then once I get this pinned down, I will pin the top. Possibly. Sometimes I just stitch the one side and hold flat the other side, because sometimes this lace will move under the machine. Alright, so there's that, because I will stitch this first and then go around. I'm probably not going to pin that. Now, let's go ahead and work on the top. So what I usually do is just spread this out and cut it. So I'm working with a smaller piece. And I'm gonna go get my ruler. It's a gauge ruler, so it helps to keep everything a lot more uniform. So go ahead and put this down to 3/4, which is just about where it was already. And then I'm going to use the ruler to pin my lace, 3/4 of an inch from the top of the shoulder. And I'm going to start in the middle because this is a curved shoulder. It'll be easier to keep it in place. I'm also going to overpin this because this one seems to like to move. And just like the other one, I'm just going to stitch the one side first. One thing I can say about this lace is it likes to move, so make sure you're holding it nice and tight or nice and straight and close to your presser foot if you're going to make this pattern. This lace does not want to stay down. I'm having some troubles holding it down. Sometimes having nails helps. Not always. So there's the top lace, and we'll go ahead and do the bottom lace. It's definitely not perfect. This is where it started to pucker on me, but it's okay for my first time. All right, I guess we'll do the bottom side this way because that's the way I put my pins in. This lace is a bit easier because it's flatter. So my video did cut off close to the middle of my stitching, but I just completed stitching all the way around all of the lace. The next thing I do need to do is trim all of the edges. Literally, I will trim all of the lace at the seam line of the sleeve. I guess you technically don't actually have to do that, but it keeps the bulk out of the seam line, and you'd probably have to trim your seams anyway. So now that that is done, I'll go ahead and do the other sleeve. So for the sleeves, there is something a little bit different on the wide lace, which is the bottom lace. So on the back, I have to split down the center of my stitching to open it up, and then I will use my iron to press those pieces out towards the stitching that I did. We'll roll it so that there is no possibility of fraying, and then I have to re-stitch over the stitching line for both of these. So I'll go ahead, I will split these off camera, and then I'll show you how I press it, or how I pressed. I will show you how I pressed it and then stitch it. Okay, so this is what it looks like just pinned. So now it says to stitch on the same line, but I'm going to stitch just outside because it doesn't say to fold it over and keep it, like, make sure it's hemmed. So this won't work right on the exact same stitching line, so I'm going to stitch just outside of it, but you won't really be able to see it anyways. Both sleeves are finished. Look at, they look so pretty. You can almost not at all in person see those stitching lines, so I'd be surprised if you can see them on camera. By the way, obviously that blue line, it's a washable marker, so I'm gonna have to wash it out. You can barely see it either, but I can see it pretty well. Okay, so now the next step is to attach the sleeves to the bodice, which I have right here in my lap. And even though these are drop sleeves and not set in, we still pin them right sides together, matching up the notches. There is no easing on this because it is just a drop sleeve, as you can see here in the picture. No easing on the sleeves. So I'm going to just go ahead and pin these together, match up those notches and pin them together, and then do the stitch. That's right. And then I'm running low on storage space on my phone, so unfortunately this isn't 100% a straight tutorial. But here's the sleeve, and it goes from this, whoops, it goes from this corner to this corner, right sides together and just match your corners up and the notches and pin and stitch. Sleeves are attached to the bodice here. They look pretty nice so far. Kind of hard to tell what it's all gonna look like. So now the next step is to do the underarm and side seams, because that is all stitched together in one piece. So we will line up all these seam lines on the sleeves. And I think I do have a side notch here, and I'll line up the bottoms and the edges of the sleeves and do that seam. And then I'll go ahead and press all of. Next step for the bodice of the dress is to hem the sleeves. So I have a 5/8 inch roll to hem, and I'm just going to do a straight stitch on there. Next thing we have to do is put together the neckband. So if you get your front and back neckband pieces and the inner facings, get your inner facing attached, or what is the word? Fused to the wrong side of your fabric, and then pin them and stitch them at the shoulder seams. Once they're stitched together, press the seams towards the back, and then we have to hem the outside edge. Hem the outside edge. So I'll do a straight stitch, a 1/4 inch from the edge of the fabric, and then press that, and then I'll also press that, or stitch that down so it's not flapping around. Missed hitting that play button. So again, I lied. You still press the outside edge of the neckband under, but then we pin the right side of the neckband to the wrong side of the bodice. Pin right side of neckband to wrong side of garment, matching centers, back, shoulder seams, and large dots. Stitch the neck edge, reinforce the inner corners by stitching over the first stitch. Layer the seam and clip stitching at the inner corners. Since I'm supposed to reinforce the corners, I'll just use the reinforced stitch on my machine because I have that, and the whole thing will be reinforced. Wrong side and right side here. And I always like to start at my shoulder seams and pin those. So my shoulder seams are pinned in place. I will now match up the notches, the raw edges, and pin all of that, and then do a reinforced straight seam on my machine. If you don't have the reinforced seam, just stitch over the stitching twice, but according to this pattern, you only need to do it in the corners, and I'm just going to do the entire seam. So once the neckband is on, we now have to press the seam up into the neckband, and then also press the neckband over, and then stitch on the seam line to encase the seam into the neckband. Okay, so I have my neckband all pinned and it's ready to be stitched along basically just the bottom here. But my corners, that's the best corner I have, and it's not flat. But here's the other one. But I'm gonna go ahead and do my best and see how it turns out, and I'm sure it'll be fine. I just need to continue to learn this and figure this out. So I'm gonna make that straight stitch, and then I'll show you the next step. So here's the finished neckline. It's far from perfect, but it really is fine for me. Next step is the midriff. So the one midriff piece that is interfaced is the midriff, and then the other one is the facing. With right sides together, so on the outside of the bodice and the outside of the midriff, we have to match the notches with right sides together. Match your double notches. I know you can't see them, but I have them here and here, and I just had them on the waistband here and here. Match those. And then pin the rest of the midriff, the rest of the midriff to the bodice and do a straight stitch. And then I'll do that and tell you the next step. All right, once the midriff is stitched or basted onto the bodice, now press up the bottom of the midriff basing, and then with the right side of the facing to the wrong side of the bodice, pin those together at the notches, and then press the facing and the midriff down. Here's the bodice finished, and the midriff is pressed and the facing is pressed down. Once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and set the bodice aside. It's time to work on the skirt. The first step of the skirt is to make the pleats. So I actually still have to get the markings on the skirt, so I'll go ahead and do that. So the first step of the skirt is the pleats, and you can slightly see the lines here. So we have to, at the ends of the lines is a small dot. We have to match up these small dots and match up the lines all the way down and pin those. So I'll start at the small dot. Bring those together. Okay, and just like you do with darts, except when we stitch, we start at the end and then we have back stitch to reinforce at the small dot. Each skirt panel has 3 pleats, and we do them all the same. So I'll go ahead and finish pinning this and the other 3 and make all of the pleats. Once the pleats are done, which mine are, this is the back, and I did stitch the center seam before I did the pleats. Press the pleats in the back towards the center and press the pleats in the front toward the front edge, so also towards the center. Once they are pressed, then baste across the top edge so they don't go all flapping about. All right, they look the same, but here is a front skirt panel with the pleats. And this is the center front here. So next step is to put the pockets in and then do the side seams. So let's go ahead and get the pockets. Okay, so with right sides together, which means I need to find this pocket. Match up the notches. There are dots here as well, but as long as the notches are matched up, then the pockets will be in the right spot. With right sides together, we will pin and then we will stitch all of the pocket seams to the side seams of the skirt. So I'll go ahead and pin all of them and stitch them, and then I'll be back to show you how to do the side seams. Once you have your pockets attached to your side seams, you're going to want to press the seam towards the pocket for all of them, and then with right sides together, stitch your side seams front to back making sure to stitch around the pocket, not all the way down the seam. Go around so that you have a pocket. I'm going to use the overlock stitch on this machine so I don't have to serge it, and then I'll trim my seams from there. And I will press those seams open. Well, I will press the seams towards the back and then be back. Okay, I have the skirt all stitched at the side seams, and then as I was pressing, I realized that it would be dumb to press it to the back because of the pockets. If you don't have pockets, you can press your seam to the back, but if you do, press your seam to the front so that your pockets are facing towards the front as well. Once that's completed, the next step is to attach the lace trim to the skirt. So I will be doing the large trim first at the first, third, and fourth lines that I have marked on my dress. And then those will be cut away just like this sleeve lace was. So I'll do those three, and then I will just attach the thin lace to the second row, just like I did on the sleeve here and on the front of the dress. I finally, and I say finally because each of those laces took a while. You have to stitch it 4 times, top and bottom, well, I guess not each of them. The thin one you don't have to do, but because we open out, this is the inside, you can see these are folded, pressed, and stitched down right next to the lace. Here's the outside, and you can see that it is not cut in the small lace. So this is the entire skirt completed. Very big. Those are the pockets there that are opening up. We attach the skirt to the bodice. Oops. But we have to attach it to the midriff, which is not the facing. The midriff is the outside, the interfaced piece. Obviously right sides together and match up all of our notches. Center back right here. I don't think I have the center back actually marked, but I do have the notches on here somewhere. I just have to find them. So I'm going to go ahead and pin my side seams at the very least so I can get that lined up. Yep, these are pretty much just gonna fit all on there anyways. Now I'm just going to go ahead and, because it's all pretty much straight, I'm going to go ahead and pin this and then do a straight stitch and then trim the seam. Okay, once you have the skirt attached to the midriff, you're going to then fold that facing right back down over on top of it. And in case the seam, the waistline seam, in whip stitches all the way across and stitch up the midriff facing. That is why we pressed it under 5/8 of an inch, so that we already had a nice pressed edge so that we could easily whip stitch that. So I went ahead and did that already. And so now we'll go ahead and move on. The next step for this dress is to do the hem. we gotta go ahead and hem that dress. The hem is 1¼ inches on this dress. The directions say to press up the hem, which would be 1¼ inches, and then press the raw edge 1/4 inch in. That is a bit harder to do that way. So I'm going to press up the raw hem my 1/4 inch, and then I will press up the rest, or all of it, 1 inch, so that I get the 1¼ inch. It also says to stitch the hem along the pressed edge so that your stitch is, or your hem is 1 inch thick. Okay, it's all hemmed. Looks so nice. Next step is to work on the placket, the front placket. So you want to prepare your placket, which is to apply your inner facing to the wrong side of the placket, cut your notches, and then put your markings on. I am going to put the button and buttonhole markings on after I attach the placket to the dress. So here's the placket. I do already have, the notches cut right there and right there. This is the top of, this attaches to the top of the dress here. It's both pieces as well. So the next step now is to, again, use my, here it is, my gauge, my little gauge ruler, 5/8 inch. We have to press the unnotched edges of the placket in 5/8 inch, and then trim them to 3/8 inch. All right, once it's pressed, I didn't trim mine. I'll usually trim mine closer to actually stitching to make sure that I have it all pressed in the correct spot, and I have enough to completely cover the front. Next is to pin right sides together, matching the notches and making a straight stitch. Plackets for me are a little bit difficult, so I'm going to walk you through step by step. So that is the next thing I'm going to do, is pin the plackets right side together to the dress, matching the notches at the top. Okay, once the placket is pinned, you'll then go ahead and do a straight stitch. I did mine at 3/8 inch on both sides because I'm worried that it's not going to be wide enough for me. Now I need to go ahead and trim that seam. It says to layer it. So layer it is trimming the seam, but each layer, like the placket is at the short layer, it's like 1/4 inch left, and then there's like 3/8 inch on the dress piece for layering when you trim that off. And then I will have to press the placket out away from the dress and the seam towards the placket. You'll fold the placket back on itself, so right sides together. Stitch the top and the bottom across so that it will form a sort of casing. And then turn that out, right sides out, and press that so that it's a nice straight seam and a nice straight flat placket, and then pin and stitch. All right, so the plackets are finished. They are folded over and stitched all on the inside, both of them. I've then gone and laid the dress out on my ironing board, and I have marked, as you can see, all of the buttons and buttonholes down the dress. The buttonholes will go on the right side of the dress, and the buttons will go on the left side of the dress. So that is the final step. Thank you for watching my video this week. I hope you enjoyed it as usual. Overall, I do really like this dress. It's not hard. There's just, with all of the details, there's a lot of different steps that you have to go through. However, once you get used to sewing on the lace and opening that up and stitching through, that's pretty easy once you get used to that. Once you figure out really where to put the presser foot and the needle in the kinds of lace you have, because I was having problems with mine getting a little bit wavy depending on where it was stitching through. Once I got that figured out, that was pretty easy as well. I really do enjoy making pin tucks and pleats. It's time consuming and it's kind of tedious, but I do love the overall look after it's all finished. One thing about this pattern, I did decide on the size based on the final pattern measurements, and I don't know what the issue was, if the final pattern measurements were incorrect or not. Overall, if the dress fits decently well. For whatever reason, this area ended up being probably a size too tight from what I would have wanted it to be. And even after measuring the sleeves, this literally just the upper area of the sleeve is tighter than I would like it to be. Otherwise, other than that, I really do like this pattern. With the lace on the bottom of the dress, having the fabric cut through it so that it's open is actually really nice and light and breezy on a warm day. It's about 70, 72 degrees right now, and I'm not warm. Like, my legs are not warm at all because I'm able to feel the breeze through it, so that's really nice. If you saw in the footage, I do still have some blue marks on my dress. I just finished getting the buttonholes on, and I still have not. These are washable fabric markers, or whatever, pattern markers, whatever you want to call them. And so I have not rinsed the dress yet, but I will be doing that here shortly. I also don't know for sure if I missed marking 2 buttonholes on the placket. And I may have, it's possible, but there was no button here and no button here, and with the fit here there was a really big gape, so I needed to add a button here, and then just to balance it out I had to add the button here. That could have been my mistake. That could actually be a pattern thing. I haven't gone back to check the placket to be sure. So if I do, and I may make this dress again, but if I do, I will go up to a size 18 in the bust just to be sure that it fits correctly, and a size 18 in the sleeve. Otherwise, a size 20 in the waist and hip fits just fine. I think if I went up to a size 20, then the bust would be too big because I usually have to do a petite pattern measurement anyways. So that's all I've got for you for this week. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Who knows, maybe you learned something. I am trying to get into doing more of a tutorial style, but I'm finding I'm having storage issues for my video, so I am not quite being able to do that. So I will try to do that more as I can. If you liked my video, hit that like button. It tells YouTube that to push it out and share it because people like it. If you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching Rebecca's Sewing Room. This was So Be It.